Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Garodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission and Director of the Department of City Planning. Welcome to today's review session of the City Planning Commission of September 2nd, 2025. Happy September, everybody. Hope you all had a good and relaxing Labor Day weekend. We are joined today by Vice Chair Knuckles, Commissioners Benjamin, Cerullo, Crowell, Dweck, Gold, Kermani, Mann, and Marin on Zoom, Commissioner Osorio, Commissioner Rampersad on Zoom. So welcome to all of you. I also want to note we have a special commissioner joining us today, Commissioner for a day, and his name is Reagan Joshi, and he is sitting over here to my side. He is a 10th grader at Stuyvesant High School, and he has an interest in public affairs, and we're very, very happy to have him with us today. So welcome, Commissioner Joshi. Let's do that. Before we get to today's agenda, I just want to get to some news related to the Department of City Planning. I'd like to express my deepest thanks to the City Council for approving the Midtown South mixed-use plan. This initiative will deliver nearly 10,000 new homes in the heart of Manhattan, where it had previously been impossible to build housing, despite its excellent location and transit access. It is unfathomable that in an area this central, with a housing crisis as dire as we have, that if you wanted to build housing, our own rules just wouldn't allow it. Thanks to this plan brought to fruition with the hard work of the Department of City Planning, the City Planning Commission, the leadership of Council members Eric Botcher and Keith Powers, and Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine, we have changed all of that. With new housing, affordable housing, commercial and manufacturing businesses, investments in the garment and fashion industries, and millions of dollars in public realm improvements, we've set this area on a path to become a more vibrant 24/7 neighborhood. With last month's approval, this administration has reached a truly amazing milestone. We have now enabled over 100,000 new homes through city-led rezoning plans, from City of Yes to the Bronx Metro North Plan to Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn and now Midtown Manhattan. Every single one of these homes will make a difference in building a more affordable city for generations to come. So congratulations to everybody on that. Moving to today's meeting, we have a short agenda focused on upcoming hearings, which will be tomorrow, Wednesday, and votes for items that are already in public review. We're also going to have a few follow-ups to discuss what we heard from New Yorkers on applications that recently had public hearings before the Commission, including the Kingsbridge Armory redevelopment. Constructed in the early 20th century and designated as a New York City landmark in 1974, the Kingsbridge Armory has remained underutilized for many years. The proposal by 8th Regiment Partners, LLC, and the New York City Economic Development Corporation looks to change that by adaptively reusing the site to create new opportunities for jobs and housing. The plan would preserve the Armory's historic exterior while reactivating the interior with a new 17,000-person indoor arena. The reimagined Armory would also include hundreds of thousands of square feet for entertainment, commercial, light manufacturing, along with community facilities. Alongside the Armory, a new apartment building would provide approximately 500 income-restricted affordable homes, steps from the 4 train at Kingsbridge Road. Finally, we'll go over some modifications to the One LIC neighborhood plan, an ambitious proposal that would create 14,700 new homes and 14,000 new jobs in an underutilized part of Long Island City. The plan also includes commitments to create a unified, resilient waterfront with improved public access and amenities, transform a city-owned site at 4436 Vernon Boulevard into a mix of community-focused uses, and much more. So, with that, let's get right to it. Madam Secretary, take it away.
Good afternoon and welcome to the City Planning Commission Review Session for Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. The time is 1:07 p.m. and a quorum is present. The first 2 items on our agenda are pre-hearing reviews of site selections and acquisitions in Queens Community District 3 and Brooklyn Community District 5. I'll note there was a memo in your materials. Our presenters are Joy Kim, Derek Jasmine, and Lindsay Robinson.
All right, hello.
There we go. Okay, good afternoon, commissioners. It takes a second, okay. Good afternoon. Returning for a hearing tomorrow, September 3rd, are two applications by the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation and the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services for acquisition and site selection of multiple privately owned sites for potential future park developments in Brooklyn Community District 5, and Queens Community District 3. As a reminder, these are the first of a series of applications Parks and DCAS are bringing to the Commission to increase the feasibility and efficiency of acquiring park sites in underserved neighborhoods and to ultimately close the walk to a park gap citywide. By seeking acquisition authority for a set of sites that meet certain criteria within geographically defined areas, the city will be able to more effectively compete in the private real estate market to negotiate purchase of sites that become available for sale, thereby saving city time and resources. We will now present the Community Board and Borough President recommendations for each application.
Thank you, Joy. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This project focuses on Brooklyn Community District 5, specifically the neighborhoods of Cypress Hills, City Line, and East New York. The initiative falls within Community District 5, and it's represented by Council Districts 37 and 42, led by Council Members Sandy Nurse and Chris Banks. Later on today, this evening, on September 2nd, Community Board 5 will be holding a public hearing. Therefore, the department has not received comments. However, we'll be sure to include it in the next CPC briefing package before the CPC votes. The Brooklyn Borough President held a public hearing August 20th and on August 27th provided a recommendation of conditional approval. The Borough President's conditions included the following 4 parks. Commit to coordinate capital strategy to successfully acquire properties, develop new park and open spaces, and increase the number of New Yorkers who live within a short distance to a quality open space. Address outstanding park and open space deficiencies in other community districts that have seen increases in population, shifts in demographics, particularly sharp increases in number of youth and older adults, and areas with a desperate health outcomes. Invest in park accessibility gaps, including curb cuts, sidewalk repairs, and other infrastructure that reduces barriers for people of all abilities, and improve landscaping and increase tree canopy within facilities with majority blacktop surfaces to reduce ground temperatures and increase thermal comfort throughout the year. This concludes my presentation, and I'll now pass it to Derek to present Queens Community District 3.
Good afternoon. This application is focused on Queens Community District 3, which includes the neighborhoods of Jackson Heights, East Elmhurst, and North Corona. This district is represented by Council Districts 21, 22, and 25, led by Council Members Francisco Moya, Tiffany Caban, and Shikar Krishnan. On July 17th, 2025, Community Board 3 held a public hearing and issued a conditional favorable vote of 31 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstaining, and their conditions included that all properties selected for this project must be designed in line with the proposed plans submitted in the original application. All acquired properties will be used solely for the development of park and recreational space. Upon the purchase of any property within this or future applications, the Department of Parks and Recreation must meet with Community Board 3 within 90 days to present their proposed plans for the acquired property. And further, upon acquiring said property within 90 days, present to the Community Board that will demonstrate that there is proper funding in place to not just build upon the specific site, but also maintain it for the foreseeable future. The Queensboro President held a public hearing on August 21st and on August 27th provided a recommendation of approval, and the approval included the following conditions: that the applicants must follow through on Community Board 3's condition to notify the board if and when parcels are acquired, as well as present design plans for the board's feedback and approval, and based on a conversation with the property owner, the applicant should consider removing 90-01 23rd Avenue from the secondary parcel list. The property owner has expressed wishes to develop this parcel in the future. And with that, I will now pass this back to Joy.
Now we will briefly address some of the Commission's questions from certification. Note that some of these are more thoroughly discussed in the memo that was sent to you in Friday's package. We first want to lay out some similarities and differences between a typical individual acquisition approval and the batch approach proposed here. First, an acquisition approval typically remains open indefinitely. However, here we are adding a sunset 10 years after CPC approval by which the property owner must sign a contract with the city. The acquisition approval would also sunset if the walk to a park gap closed in that community district. This leads me to my next point. Typically, an agency does not have to report back to the Commission after actually acquiring a property using the acquisition approval. But here, parks would be required to report in writing to the CPC when they have acquired property pursuant to this approval and to provide a status update on meeting the walk to a park gap in that community district. Finally, it was asked at certification whether eminent domain could be used here. A typical acquisition approval can be used for any method of acquisition, including purchase or condemnation. And while that is technically true in this batch approach as well, we know that the goal of this approach is to make negotiation easier with willing sellers and to put parks on a more equal playing field in the private real estate market. Parks is also aware of the remaining questions from certification and can speak more to things tomorrow at the hearing, like the suitability of sites selected for park use, particularly secondary sites, what is required in each community district to close the walk to a park gap, capital budget approval processes, timeline for park development, effective acquisition approval on private property, open space ratio methodology, alignment with NYCHA for sites near the NYCHA campus, the likelihood of purchasing occupied sites, secondary sites, and brownfield sites. In conclusion, the applicant's parks and DCAS will present their applications for acquisition and site selection of multiple potential future park sites in Brooklyn Community District 5 and Queens Community District 3 at the public hearing tomorrow, September 3rd. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Joy. I know we're going to have questions for you, and also expect that we will have plenty of questions for the Parks Department tomorrow. Let me start with just a couple of quick ones from me. So the process here, if we were to approve a batch acquisition of the sites presented in these two community boards, Parks Department says, great, I now have acquisition authority. I'd like to proceed and acquire Site A in Community Board 3 and Site F in Community Board 5. They go ahead and do that. They have the acquisition authority. They negotiate it, do the thing. They come back and present to the commission, to the community board. What do they come back and do after they have gone ahead and exercised that acquisition authority? What is the rule for them as it is currently proposed?
As currently proposed, they would write to the commission that of their acquisition of a property under this approval, which again, they typically wouldn't have to do, but here we're having them do that because of the number of sites proposed. They also would go to the community board, which is typical of any acquisition, including this one, where they would work with the community board to come up with conceptual design plans for the proposed or for the actually acquired site, talk about the needs from the community and desires of the community of what they want to see in that park, and work with them on a design and plan.
Okay, and one of the questions that I want to pose to the Parks Department on Wednesday, this is really not for you, Joy, is the question of what level of detail is sufficient for this commission to feel comfortable to move forward on a site, let alone on many sites for parks acquisition, even if you are biased toward enabling parks to have more power in the process and more leverage when reviewing these opportunities. What detail is sufficient for us? So that's a question that I'd like to explore with the Parks Department. And then I wanted to ask you about one of the things on the chart where you noted that the typical versus the batch. Typical is all acquisition methods are possible, including negotiation or eminent domain. Batch acquisition, the point is to make negotiation easier with willing sellers. Talk for a minute about eminent domain. Does the batch acquisition process, as presented, make it easier for parks to use eminent domain to be able to acquire these potential properties? What about this makes it easier or less easy or neutral? What does it do as it relates to eminent domain?
With regard to eminent domain, I don't know that this process, this batch approach proposed is really any that different from a typical individual acquisition approval. I mean, they would still have to go through the processes in court and other requirements of the eminent domain procedure law. But the biggest difference with this approach really shows up in the method of acquisition that is negotiation and for purchase from willing sellers, because this whole idea of needing more bargaining power and having more options of sites is not really as much of a problem when it comes to eminent domain, because negotiation isn't involved. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, the question that I suppose I'm really asking is under the use of eminent domain, and again, I realize that's not what this is about. This is not about eminent domain, but does the city or state need acquisition authority from this commission to exercise the power of eminent domain? And are we giving a more options to the city to have the ability to exercise that, again, recognizing that is not the point. That's not what the Parks Department wants to do. They want to be able to negotiate with multiple players at once and be able to find a great deal and to be able to deliver on more parks in neighborhoods that really need them. So I realize what I'm asking is not the point of this, but are we, well, I guess you understand the question. What are we giving, do you need the acquisition authority to exercise eminent domain?
I believe under the city charter, the answer is yes. For the city charter says under the chapter about property of the city that whether it's through condemnation, purchase, what have you, an acquisition ULURP is required. Okay, so then the question, this is another one for parks, is for those who would look at this and say, boy, that feels like we're creating the possibility of eminent domain, even though that's not how the city intends to use this power. How would you calm the commission? How would you calm community members if they were concerned about that? So I will reserve that one for Wednesday, and I'm going to go to Vice Chair Knuckles and then Commissioner Benjamin.
Okay, thank you. Well, one of my questions actually was on eminent domain, so I'll await for the continuation of that discussion. At this point, because these are all privately owned sites, right? Have any of the owners been notified? Do they have any inkling of what's planned here?
Yes, all the property owners have been notified in writing via mail before the community board hearing and the borough president hearing and the CPC hearing, as is required under the rules of the city of New York. So they have received multiple notifications each of this action and of their opportunities at various public forums to testify if they wish.
To your knowledge, has there been any responses?
I believe there has. Parks can speak in more detail. I know that there's been at least one homeowner that was interested in selling to the city, but also, was interested in other options of selling to others. And then there was the one property owner that the Queens Borough President noted as expressing a desire to develop their own site in the future. You know, I'll note that that if the acquisition approval were granted for that site, that wouldn't preclude any ability for that owner to do whatever they wanted with their site in the future, whether it's to develop it themselves or sell to someone else. And I believe at least one business owner has reached out to Parks as well to just inquire further about what this means and the purpose of the land use actions here.
Okay. At this point, is there a projected completion or, you know, transformation of these parks? What's envisioned in terms of assuming everything went right and you were to acquire all these sites? How long do you think it would take to actually make them, transform them into parkland? I guess Parks would know that better than
yes, but I will just note that Parks does not intend to, nor would it really be realistic for them to acquire all of the sites here. The idea is to get the acquisition authority for a wider range of sites so that they have the option to acquire as many or as close to as many as they need, but that there kind of needs to be a wider range of options in order to, you know, because not everyone is going to be a willing seller. Not everyone is going to be able to close a deal with Parks. So I think in the best case scenario, Parks can speak more tomorrow about, you know, what number of parks might be the best case scenario for them to really meet their need in each of these community districts, and what the typical timeline is after acquisition for, you know, how long it takes to design the park and develop the park.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Sure thing. Thank you, Vice Chairman. Commissioner Benjamin?
Thank you very much for the presentation. As you know, during the certification briefing, I had lots of questions, many of which I still have. And right now, I'm certainly skeptical about this whole program. My first one is a planning question about the planning rationale for the location and what Parks' criteria was in choosing these locations. For instance, there are 4 locations on Atlantic Avenue, which it seems to me, given the fact that it's an incredibly busy street with 6 lanes of moving traffic and as a major truck route from Brooklyn to Long Island, is not where I would pick to put a park for Tots or anybody else. So I'd like to understand better, this may be from city planning or from Parks, what the criteria was in choosing these sites. Also included in that question is the fact that some of these locations, particularly in Brooklyn, are in districts that are 1, 2, and 3 family districts zoned that way, where people have backyards. So I'm not sure how Parks Department criteria took into account that people had other non-public open space availability. So I'd like an answer to what that, because Parks told us the first time that they had a large set of criteria, and I'd like to really understand and dig into that. The last is how they considered city lots. Since these are individual lots that are not, that can be 3 different sizes, including fairly small, did they look at city-owned lots, and why were all the city-owned, are they considering any city-owned lots that wouldn't have to go through this process?
I can start to answer some of those questions, but, you know, again, Parks would be able to go into a little more detail. In terms of the criteria for choosing sites, you know, really they were looking at gaps within these community districts where people are lacking in open space or, you know, further than a walk to a park. And because there are many different design options, you know, including playgrounds for smaller children or recreation space like a basketball court or something like that. That's why they've included a diversity of sites, including ones that are maybe on busier streets and may not be appropriate for a park for small children, but could potentially be a park that has like sports courts and athletic equipment and things like that. But they are prepared tomorrow to go more deeply into how they chose their criteria, and also can answer questions about individual sites that the commission is concerned about.
And if they could send us the criteria so we could look at it and really be prepared to have a discussion about it, that would be really helpful.
Sure. I'll just refer to the criteria that were presented at certification. So these were the criteria for how they selected the primary sites, and then these were the criteria for the secondary sites. The main difference is between primary and secondary is that secondary includes lots that are not vacant and are underbuilt and have certain uses on them. And then beyond that, there were sites that they did take out because they had landmarks on them or, you know, things like that. And they can speak to more of that tomorrow as well.
Okay. And also where and how they considered city lots.
Yes. So yes, to answer your other two questions, for city lots, I'm not sure about that, but I will flag that to them for them to ask. You know, how that process works with, you know, outside of this like acquisition of private property process. For your question about lower density districts and 1, 2, 3 family homes, parks can again speak to the open space ratio and how they selected these community districts. Their goal in selecting the community districts was to select ones that have higher density of residents, so, you know, more than 15,000 residents per square mile living further than a walk to a park, and having either a lower open space ratio or a high poverty rate. So the goal was to target community districts that were a bit higher density. But I will say that even in places where there's a lot more lower density homes with private backyards and whatnot, that the Department of City Planning, from our perspective, still sees you know, a value in having dedicated public open spaces where communities to gather, and that there is intrinsic value in that, even in areas that have a lot of private open space.
Okay, I understand that, but I'd still like to know how they considered private
Sure.
open space in their analysis.
Sure.
And there's a big discussion about the primary sites versus the secondary sites, but how would that be enforced? We're giving authority to the Parks Department for all the sites. So if they decided that a site that was on the secondary list was more important to them, could they just acquire that?
If the commission has given the authority to acquire, you know, either the primary or secondary sites, it would be, and Parks sought to acquire one of the sites, then like law department, OMB, the parties that usually enforce an acquisition approval would look at the CPC resolution, make sure that the site is continuing to meet their criteria, and has been listed as one of the potential sites. But you are correct that Parks would not need to exhaust all of the primary sites before moving to the secondary site list, but they would have to meet the criteria of either criteria list.
Okay, as you can tell, that's of concern to me since the primary sites are vacant and I might be okay with that, but the secondary sites, many of them have active businesses on them and I'm not okay with those. So if they could, in fact, just decide that there was a greater need in this location, so they're taking the secondary site, that's a problem for me. And I'd like to explore a little bit the uses. In the memo that you sent and in the materials, this would be an acquisition by Parks for an open space use.
Mm-hmm.
But if Parks Department needs an open space parking, would that fit the bill?
They would need to come back for a site selection, Euler, because that would be a change in use from what they're getting the approval for.
If they didn't spend any capital budget money on it, they wouldn't need to come back for site selection. Just parked cars on it.
Sarah Whittam is. Do you want to speak to this?
You're suggesting that for a period of time, if they needed to park some Parks vehicles on it.
Yeah. Would that?
You know, this application is restricting it for a park use pursuant to
a park or open space?
A park use with the three types of options, that it would be a park, not a park use of, I know under the bridges they may park some vehicles or, you know, have some sort of sole compost facility or something. But here we're talking about, and they've described, a park use with one of three options depending on the size of the lot and the suitability, and working with the community about what they want after the acquisition.
So if Parks
it
wanted
would be
to use it for some other use, that would
I think
trigger
that would,
review by technical review, presumably?
And if they acquire, they have to come back to us and notify the commission that they have acquired and they are pursuing the park, funding and design of the park.
What if they don't get the funding? They've acquired. They tell us they've acquired, and the city, the city decides that they're not funding it.
I can't say what the budgetary restrictions are later. They will have the opportunity within the 10-year period to acquire and move ahead.
Once they acquire, though, what is the enforcement mechanism to make sure that it becomes a park, as opposed to staying where it is or leasing it back to the former owner to use as a bank or a Dunkin' Donuts or whatever is there now?
So this application is is restricted for a park's use. If at the time of acquisition, not everything is in place to create the park, and Parks could probably speak better to this, but upon acquisition, it's going to move into Parks jurisdiction. And so they'll be required to maintain the safety of the property and get ready to make it a park use.
But they could continue to lease to the current owner of the site.
Well, once Parks acquires the site, like once the city acquires the site, if they wanted to lease it back to a private owner, I think they would have to go through a disposition Euler. So once Parks acquires a site, it really is sort of restricted to park use. I mean, of course, things happen with funding. There is a possibility, and Parks can speak to that. But I will say that that's a risk that occurs even with a typical individual acquisition approval, beyond what's being proposed here.
Right. My concern really goes back to the old days when we acquired lots of properties that were in urban renewal areas, and then we didn't get funding, and we ended up with swatches of property for which there was no use. So I'm looking for some kind of, I wouldn't say guarantee, but how do we make sure that if this is approved, that property is not acquired and then sits dormant? I understand that may not be a question for you. It may be a question for council. It may be a question for Parks Council. But all of these, as you can hear, are my concerns that don't get me necessarily to a robust yes. In fact, quite the opposite.
I will note I actually am in council at DCP.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But, no, it's okay. I didn't introduce myself as such, but yeah, I think that it would be good to discuss that with Parks, and we'll think about that more here as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Commissioner. And just, we will have plenty of occasion on Wednesday to pose these questions to the Parks Department, so I encourage you all to, obviously, Joy's happy to answer anything that we've got, but a lot of these are really good for them, and I intend to do that myself. Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation and for the memo. I think this proposal is really interesting as it creates at least the opportunity to anticipate open space, potential open space reductions, given kind of like the initiatives to, increase residential density, including in these communities. And so it is as much about increasing open space for current residents as it is to plan ahead. And so I think that this is an important idea, and I commend the city for considering something like this. However, I have a little bit of a hard time understanding the public benefit of this. I mean, the idea of creating facilitating the process to accelerate the acquisition is clear. But, there's also unintended consequences that we discussed at certification associated, for example, with the potential speculation that could be created once, the city has a acquisition authorization to proceed without a plan. And in that regard, I very much relate to the questions from Commissioner Benjamin in the sense that, we'll discuss tomorrow with the sister agencies kind of like how detailed and whether or not there's assurances on that. I will ask some questions building on the comments, the conditions set forth by the Brooklyn Borough President, which are, I think, really important in terms of the quantitative and qualitative aspects of the intention here. But I have a question for the department, and I think it's really a question for legal counsel in the sense that it sounds to me that we should explore the conditions under which we say yes to this. I think that we're being asked whether this is a yes or no approval, but I wonder if we can provide more guidance in terms of, first of all, which of the properties that are being considered should be prioritized. Again, going back to the areas where, for example, we are exploring additional residential density. It was really clear how when we were touring Broadway Junction, which is, close enough to CD5, there's opportunities to activate, properties in surrounding community districts to anticipate what's going to be a reduction in open space. And so from legal counsel's point of view, what is the latitude that the City Planning Commission has for being able to provide a more active guidance in terms of what should happen, both in terms of which properties should be prioritized and maybe what are some of the explicit commitments that should be in place to do that? I know that this acquisition is reliant on whether there's a capital budget, et cetera, but what are the activities, the actions that we're expecting parks to do to guarantee that they're actually going to do something on this? Otherwise, I have the same question that Commissioner Benjamin in terms of what is the expectation under which that we're using as a condition to say yes to this?
Sure. So I think this is I think DCP Council definitely needs to think more about what is within our authority, what type of, certainly there are restrictions the commission can place. I think the question is what restrictions would be in scope, ULURP scope, but then also what restrictions are within the scope of the commission's authority to add in an acquisition site selection approval. So we'll have to, think more about that and get back to you. But, I will say that there are, as with any application, modifications the commission could make here. And, you know, going back really quickly to your first question about, you know, like plans and whatnot, I will say that typically, you know, even in an individual application, for an acquisition, Parks doesn't come to DCP like with a site plan, because it's part of their process to like work with the community after they've acquired the site. Really the public benefit is to make it just even a little more feasible for Parks to actually acquire these sites that they have their eyes on, because typically if they come to us with an individual site, as I said, at certification, it adds another 1.5 years to the process, and so often private owners back out and are not willing to even to wait 1.5 years before they can even be given an offer by the city, which is how the process currently is. So I'd say that the public benefit is to you know, allow Parks to act as a member, a little bit more as a member of the private real estate market when they're trying to get these open space sites that the city so desperately needs.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I look forward to hearing your comments. Just to super quickly clarify, I know that they're not expected to come up with a site design, but we can set site design standards, for example, or we can also affect or adjust the criteria to prioritize within sort of like the areas that, you know, of interest, where specifically they're needed the most and what type of open spaces. So that's the type of, I think, latitude that I would love your guidance in terms of how can we, as a City Planning Commission, have a stronger impact.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Crowell.
Just want to ask one thing. In the presentation on tomorrow morning, it would be helpful to have a very clear what are the benefits of doing this from a planning perspective with Walk to Parks, and why something like this, which is an innovative approach, works for that kind of a program, and then what are some of the risks of not doing it? Like I think clearly delineating benefit and risks together might help people understand a little more clearly. Because I think that you just started to articulate that there's a loss of opportunity potentially in terms of those relationships that you have with the landowners.
Yeah, absolutely. Parks and DCAS certainly plan to speak on that tomorrow, and I'll be sure to let them know to emphasize those specific points.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Mann.
Yeah, I just had a quick question on the kind of the land use rationale for some of the acquisition sites, especially the secondary sites. There's some that are, you know, medium to high density residential districts. And I just found that, you know, like in Queens Community Board 2, I think one site was even in the Long Island City rezoning area. And so I'm just wondering just not from the park standpoint, because they're not really concerned about the land use rationale probably as much as we are, but from our perspective, why we would be encouraging parks to acquire sites that are zoned for significant amounts of housing, and should we be thinking about at least carving those sites back? So maybe that's a conversation we can pick up over the next couple of weeks, but I didn't really understand that from the commission standpoint, why that would be a preferred approach.
Sure. So I believe Vice Chair Knuckles asked a similar question at certification as well, and I tried to touch on this in the memo sent to you last week, but you know, essentially, if a site is zoned like R8, for instance, or you know, another high-density residential district, that makes the site, from our perspective, appropriate for either housing, you know, higher density residential development, but that doesn't preclude it from being appropriate for open space as well, especially because, you know, in higher density zoned residential areas, there is this need for more open space because of the density, and because it tends to be like in higher density residential tends to be zoned in places that are, you know, already kind of central to the community, and therefore that would also basically there can be both land use rationale for either open space or higher density residential at those sites.
So I think I'm not arguing that there shouldn't be parks in high density districts. I guess what I'm saying is that there are places where we're actively encouraging housing to be built, especially like in the Long Island City rezoning area. And so I just found it to be interesting that we were, Parks was then also proposing to acquire those sites, which eats into some of the housing production goals. And that those are very, very expensive sites to acquire. A high density residential site in Queens Community Board 2 would be very, very expensive to acquire. So we're actually making it more expensive to require by upzoning it and then having parks acquire it. So, you know, we kind of have to pick a lane a little bit on some of those. If we think it should be a park, then we shouldn't be increasing the value of the site for the parks to acquire it because we think it's a park in a high-density district. And there's, I think, only one example of that, so I don't want to belabor that point.
Yeah.
But it just becomes very, very cost prohibitive to acquire privately held sites in high-density districts where we're actually upzoning them even more. So it's a marginal point because there's not that many sites like that, but I just found that to be a little bit hard to get my head around.
Yeah, we can look into that site. I will say Long Island City is, I don't believe, has any overlap with the Community District 3, the Queens Community District 3 application here. But I believe that our goal for a city-sponsored rezoning would be to not, you know, upzone a site that that Parks was also seeking to acquire. I will say that I know the Long Island City, there's an application that has not yet certified, but will be certifying in the fall for Queens Community District 2.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
is that what you're referring to?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It's part of the overall program. I know it's not part of this application. So
right.
I'm just trying to understand if this is a rollout of a series of community boards where Parks is acquiring sites across the city. Again, I actually think this is a good idea to give Parks more flexibility. I'm just trying to understand how this overlaps with the proposal we're voting on, like, for example, in a couple of weeks to increase, or actually this week, tomorrow, sorry, and how these kind of land use rationales are working with one another.
You know, maybe the LIC team, when they present in a little bit, can speak to that. I do know that that team has been coordinating with Parks to, you know, think about what sites might be appropriate for park use and could be part of the Walk to a Park initiative to help balance and complement the city-sponsored rezoning. So I'm not as familiar with those conversations, but I do know that they have been happening, and maybe they can speak more to the specific concerns in that community district.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to pick this one up tomorrow with the Parks Department. Thank you, Joy. And hopefully they were watching today and got a sense of some of the questions that are coming their way.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
I will make sure they know. Thank you.
Okay, great, terrific. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next item today, Madam Secretary.
Okay. The third item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of zoning map and zoning text amendments in Brooklyn Community District 3. Our presenter is Demetrius McLester.
Hello, Demetrius.
Good afternoon. Okay. The following presentation will serve as a refresher for this application that's certified back on May 5th of this year. This is an application from Providence House Incorporated for a zoning map amendment to change an R6B district to an R6A district, and a zoning text amendment to designate an MIH area in order to facilitate the creation of a community facility development. The proposed actions will create a new 6-story development, including 36,393 square feet of community facility space, comprised of 85 transitional housing units. The project area is located on 699 Lexington Avenue in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn Community District 3. With the development site and project area in orange, Lexington Avenue, a 70-foot wide street, is a residential street with medium-density apartment buildings. The development site and project area consists of 2 4-story tenement buildings that are used by the applicant for its participation in a consortium called Justice Works, funded by the New York City Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. The area within a 600-feet radius of the project area is largely residential and mapped with R6B and R6A zoning districts with C24 overlays along portions of Stuyvesant Avenue and Malcolm X Boulevard running north and south. Prior to beginning a review session today, a cover memo containing the community board's vote was distributed to you. Community Board 3 voted to approve this application with 35 votes in favor, 1 vote against with 1 abstention. And finally, Borough President Reynoso also voted to approve this application on August 12th of 2025 with no conditions. This concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll pick this one up tomorrow. Thanks, Demetrius. Let's go on to the next.
The fourth item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of zoning map and zoning text amendments in Brooklyn Community District 8. Our presenter is Hanif Yassi.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Hanif.
I'll be presenting today a pre-hearing item. This is an application by Bermuda Realty number 2 LLC for a zoning map amendment and zoning text amendment to facilitate MIH located at 1720 Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn's Community District 8. The application certified on May 5th, 2025. I want to make sure can we see the slides there? The project slide. The project will facilitate the construction of a new 13-story mixed-use building with approximately 300,000 square feet or 6.23 FAR, including 300 dwelling units, 84 of which will be permanently income restricted under MIH Option 1. The development will include multiple commercial and community facility spaces totaling around 70,000 square feet, as well as 112 off-street parking spaces. Slide. The applicant is seeking to rezone an M11 to C44D, R7A, and R7A C24 area, a zoning text amendment to map a mandatory inclusionary housing area. C44D or R8A residential equivalent districts permitting maximum FAR of 7.2 for residential, 3.4 for commercial uses. The project is located in the inner transit zone. No parking is required. R7A permits a maximum FAR of around 5 for buildings, including qualified affordable housing. C24 districts are commercial overlays mapped within residential neighborhoods that allow a range of local serving commercial, retail, and service uses. Slide. Atlantic Avenue is a large thoroughfare, 120 feet in width, with Long Island Railroad tracks above it, while Pacific Street to its south is 70 feet in width. To the east, Schenectady Avenue is 70 feet in width, as is Troy Avenue to the west. The surrounding area includes a mix of community facilities, public housing, schools, light manufacturing, and vacant land along Atlantic Avenue. Slide. Community Board 8 held a public hearing on this application on June 12, 2025, and on the same night voted to conditionally approve the proposal with 30 in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstaining, on the condition of 35% affordability set aside, with the breakdown being 20% available at 40% of AMI, 10% at 60, and 5% at 80% of AMI. Slide. The Borough President held a hearing on this item on July 16th, 2025, and on August 12th, 2025, approved the project without conditions, but added some comments about suggested modifications, indicating that since the applicant is proposing to rezone manufacturing land to residential and commercial districts, a greater number of affordable units at deeper affordability is warranted. Also mentioned and urged the application to, urged the applicant to extend an offer to existing businesses for a first opportunity to lease the space in the new commercial development. And also mentioned his recommendation for a larger study along Atlantic Avenue. With that, I'll take your questions.
Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I just wanted to really quickly ask, what's the department's response to especially the first recommendation? I'm really interested in understanding from your analysis where you see the need for deeper affordability here.
Well, I can have my colleagues speak to it as well, but we can't really technically push the applicant to provide more than what the MIH program requires. So there's the MIH options 1 and 2, and I believe the applicant is pursuing option 2 with a 30% set aside for 80%, but we can't require the applicant to provide a deeper affordability than what the law requires.
Thank you. And if you can also, certainly it would be great to discuss that tomorrow. But also if you can also make sure that they're prepared to discuss the sustainability measures, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, they've been made aware, and they will be ready to discuss those.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, we'll pick this one up tomorrow. Thank you. Thanks, Hanif.
Thanks, Hanif. The fifth item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a city map amendment in the Bronx Community District 11. Our presenter is Chaim Simon.
Hello, Chaim.
Hi, good afternoon. All right. Today I'm presenting the St. Raymond Avenue demapping project in the Bronx Community District 11. This is a demapping project to remove an unbuilt street mapped over an MTA subway yard and between several of the applicant's lots, private lots. The Leadership Committee of Bronx Community District 11 voted 7 in favor and 3 against to approve a recommendation of no objection. And the Bronx Borough President issued a recommendation to approve this application. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Benjamin?
I just want to this is a paper street, is it not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we will pick this one up tomorrow. Thank you, Chaim.
You're welcome.
Okay, next.
The sixth item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of the zoning map and zoning text amendments in Manhattan Community District 11. Our presenter is Trevor Levitz.
Hello, Trevor.
Commissioner Cerullo is recused.
Commissioner Cerullo is recused on this item. Thank you.
Great. Hello, Commissioners. The following is a pre-hearing presentation on an application for a zoning map and a series of zoning text amendments. We're certified on May 19th. The public hearing is scheduled for tomorrow. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority is proposing a full block rezoning of an area bounded by East 125th Street, East 124th Street, and Lexington and 3rd Avenues. The rezoning would place a portion of existing C44D district with a C611 zoning district, an R11 equivalent. The rezoning area encompasses 1 applicant-owned and 2 non-applicant-owned lots. Additionally, the applicant is proposing a series of zoning text amendments to the special 125th Street district and Appendix F to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area coterminous with the rezoning area. Approval of the actions would facilitate the development of a 405-foot mixed-use building containing approximately 550,000 square feet of floor area and 684 dwelling units, 171 of which would be permanently income restricted pursuant to MIH. The development would be built above the future terminus of Phase 2 of the 2nd Avenue subway expansion on East 125th Street. The applicant is proposing the establishment of a new subdistrict, Subdistrict B, coterminous with the rezoning area within the special 125th Street district. Subdistrict B would contain bespoke bulk regulations, including a tower bulk option, which is unique in the special 125th Street district, which is an otherwise height-limited district, with the exception of the nearby Park Avenue hub subdistrict, which you can see in that sort of semi-transparent white polygon there. The applicant is also proposing to modify various regulations within the Park Avenue hub subdistrict, which also features an applicant-owned site associated with Phase 2 of the 2nd Avenue subway, which the MTA intends to develop as of right. In both Park Avenue hub subdistrict and Subdistrict B, the applicant proposes to establish maximum base heights of 125 feet above the prevailing maximum of 85 feet elsewhere within the special district. Finally, Park Avenue Hub currently sets minimum non-residential floor area requirements of 2 FAR for new developments. The applicant proposes to reduce this requirement to 1.5 FAR, bringing the minimum into alignment with the adjacent Special East Harlem Corridors District. Moreover, this requirement would be waived for sites containing a qualifying transit easement volume. The proposed C611 district would permit a residential FAR of 15, as opposed to the existing permitted FAR of 7.2 in the existing C44D district. On June 29th, Manhattan Community Board 11 voted unanimously to approve this application with conditions. The board's conditions included the following, and I'll paraphrase. That a C411 zoning district be mapped in place of the proposed C611 district. That a future RFP process prioritize proposals exceeding the affordability requirements of MIH through the use of additional credits and programs. And that the developer commit to local hiring guidelines and to local workforce development guidelines. That the developer agreed to present future site plan and architectural drawings to CB11 beyond the requirements of ULURP. And finally, a commitment to a future community benefits agreement. And finally, that all revenue accrued to the MTA through the future ground lease be committed exclusively to funding Phase 2 of the 2nd Avenue subway. On July 8th, the Manhattan Borough President recommended approval of the application with conditions. The Borough President's conditions mirrored those of CB11's, with the exception of the C411 zoning district, the community benefits agreement, and the revenue commitment to the 2nd Avenue subway. This concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Let me see if there are any questions for you. Okay, we'll pick this one up tomorrow. Thanks, Trevor.
Great.
The seventh item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a special permit and a zoning text amendment in Manhattan Community District 5. Our presenter is Audrey Walks.
Hello, welcome.
Hi. Good afternoon. This is a pre-hearing presentation for the 1551 Broadway signage text amendment and special permit. It's a private application for a zoning text amendment to the special Midtown Theater Subdistrict Core to create a new zoning special permit, ZR 81734, that would modify signage and frontage regulations for zoning lots that measure 10,000 square feet or less. The applicant concurrently seeks the proposed special permit to allow new signage on the development site that would otherwise not comply with underlying signage regulations. An approval of these actions would facilitate the construction of a 15,500 square foot wraparound LED sign and a 7,000 square foot as-of-right sign on the development site. In the next 3 slides, I'm going to quickly recap the proposed actions and the proposed project before moving on to the community board and borough president recommendations. The zoning text amendment would amend Article 8, Chapter 1, Section 8170, to create a new zoning special permit, ZR 81734, that would modify sign and frontage regulations on smaller zoning lots. The special permit would apply not only to the development site, but also provide zoning relief to around 20 lots in the theater subdistrict core. Meanwhile, the special permit would ensure that the proposed signage modifications are consistent with the goals of the special Midtown District, particularly the entertainment-focused character of Times Square. And finally, the proposed signage would have a maximum street wall height of 135 feet before setback, and thus would exceed the maximum street wall height before setback of 60 feet above the curb level, and there would be 2 signs instead of the 3 signs currently required under zoning. In July, Manhattan Community Board 5 recommended approval of the application with 36 in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstaining. The board noted that the application would help Times Square keep pace with advancements in flexible LED sign technology and the district's evolving digital landscape. That same month, the Manhattan Borough President also recommended approval of the action. The office noted that the special permit would provide zoning relief and flexibility to owners of smaller lots in the area who wish to install continuous LED signage. It also commended the applicant's lighting study, which shows a limited impact of lights from the signs, while noting a potential opportunity for updated signage regulations should Midtown become more mixed use in character. In summary, the applicant seeks to modify signage and frontage regulations for zoning lots with 10,000 square feet or less in lot area in the Midtown, Special Midtown District Theater Subdistrict Core. It also seeks a zoning special permit to allow new LED signage on the development site that would otherwise not comply with underlying signage regulations. Thank you, and happy to take your questions.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we will have a hearing on this item tomorrow. Thank you very much again.
The eighth item on our agenda is a non-ULURP post-referral review of a zoning authorization in Brooklyn Community District 8. Our presenter is Kyra Cuevas.
Hello, Kyra.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Happy long weekend. Great, we're just waiting for the proposal slides here. Good afternoon, Commissioners and Chair Garodnick. Today I will be presenting a fresh authorization that is here for post-referral at 870-888 Atlantic Avenue, which was first heard on June 30th and was referred out to Community Board 8 on July 1st. This is a private application by 888 Atlantic Property Owner LP to facilitate a 19-story mixed-use building with a fresh food store. The applicant is requesting a fresh zoning authorization to increase the maximum building height by up to 15 feet or 1 story. There is a separate but related ministerial action for a fresh food store certification. This project is located within Community District 8 and within Council Member Crystal Hudson's district. This authorization will facilitate a 19-story mixed-use building with a total of approximately 187,000 square feet of floor area, approximately 100,077 square feet of residential floor area, resulting in 258 dwelling units, 48 of which are permanently income restricted. Approximately 7,900 square feet of floor area would be reallocated from the fresh use. The applicant requests a fresh authorization pursuant to Zoning Resolution 6322 to add 15 feet or 1 floor, increasing the maximum allowable height from 185 feet or 18 stories to 200 feet or 19 stories. On June 11th, the application was heard by Community Board 8 and was later voted on June 12th by the full board with 31 votes in favor and 1 against. The board also provided a recommendation that stated that the fresh certification approval is contingent upon the applicant's selection of a more economically friendly partner than the union market. In order to grant such authorizations, the Commission shall find that such modifications are necessary to accommodate a first story utilized as a fresh food store. The proposed modifications shall not adversely affect the central scale and character of the adjacent buildings and any adjacent historic resources, and the proposed modifications will not unduly obstruct access to light and air of the adjacent properties. The Commission may prescribe additional appropriate conditions and safeguards to minimize adverse effects on the character of the surrounding area. In response to questions and concerns raised by the Commission regarding the post hoc nature of this application, the Department recommends that additional language be added to the fresh application restrictive declaration. This language would require that the Department of City Planning staff first confirm that there is a signed lease with the operator for the fresh food store prior to a Department of Buildings issued to temporary certificate of occupancy for the bonus floor area located on the top floor, and further, that there be an inspection to ensure that there is an operational fresh food store before the DOB issues a final certificate of occupancy. While the department supports the creation of a fresh food store at this location and believes the applicant meets all of the authorization findings, additional conditions and safeguards are appropriate here to ensure that the additional residential floor area and height will facilitate a fresh food store. Thank you, and happy to take questions.
Great, thanks, Kyra. And I just want to thank you and the team, Council's office, for working to find a way that addresses certainly some of the concerns that I had about the application and, puts us essentially back to the starting point of the point of the program and what it was trying to incentivize and making sure that that actually is what is delivered. So thank you for that. Commissioner Benjamin, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Since at least the way I read the diagrams was that the applicant has already topped out.
Yes.
So if we were to disapprove this authorization, what would happen with that floor that they don't actually have authority for?
Sure. So if this is not approved, let me clarify real quick. So if the authorization is not approved under the existing zoning, then the 19th floor would be considered non-complying and overbuilt. So that means to make it compliant, we'd have to remove the 19th floor to make it compliant with the existing zoning. So that's what would happen if we disapprove the authorization for this proposal.
Okay, and do we know, since the community board was also interested in not having another union market, do we know who the operator of the fresh store might be, or are they in discussions with?
Not at this moment, but I believe that's a question that we can ask for the applicant team.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We'll schedule this one for a vote. Thanks, Kyra.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Future votes for consideration on Wednesday, September 3rd, tomorrow. Staff have prepared reports for ICO Senior Living and Domino Site B, as well as reports on 555 East Tremont, which Cassandra Manriquez is here to present on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm here to provide a post-hearing update and staff recommendation for 555 East Tremont. This is a 195 office space application to acquire office space for continued use by...
Cassandra, we can't hear you. It seems like you may be speaking, but we can't hear you.
We can hear you on Zoom, but we just can't hear you in the hearing room. So 1 second.
Stay tuned. Hang on.
The volume up in the hearing room.
Okay.
Cassandra, if you want to do an audio test, I'll confirm if we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Nope, not yet.
Okay.
1 second. Okay, Cassandra, let's do one more audio check.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Not in the CPC room.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to just get a little creative here so we can hear Cassandra. So everybody can hear her on Zoom. It's just a few of us here in the room who cannot hear her at this moment, so we're going to turn the volume up on the computer and just let's make sure everybody here can hear her. Okay, go ahead.
Great. Can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. So good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm here to provide a post-hearing update and staff recommendation for 555 East Tremont. This is a 195 office space application to acquire office space for continued use by the New York City Department of Human Resources Administration, or HRA. The applicants are HRA and the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services, or DCAS. Next slide. DCAS has responded to questions from the Commission from the August 13th public hearing. Their response was included in the package you received a couple of weeks ago. The Department of City Planning recommends that the Commission approve this action. At this location, HRA helps approximately 1,150 New Yorkers daily, most of whom reside in the Bronx. Of many, the services here include temporary cash assistance, SNAP benefits, Medicaid, and emergency intervention services. 555 East Tremont is in a densely populated neighborhood along a busy commercial corridor with several bus routes nearby. DCP shares concerns voiced at the public hearing by HRA and the Commission regarding conditions on the ground floor. The department acknowledges HRA's commitment to improving it with the aid of the landlord. And for these reasons, DCP recommends that the Commission approve this action. I'm happy to take any questions.
Hello, Cassandra?
Cassandra, can you hear us now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, great. So we're going to have Commissioner Benjamin pose her question to you again, and glad we're reconnected. Okay, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Cassandra. In the package materials, there was a discussion that DCAS would be talking with the owner of the property about the possibility of purchase, that they had not yet had that conversation, and that they would be prepared within 2 weeks. So why wouldn't we wait for the 2 weeks to hear back about purchase versus lease, since it's only a 30-day, even if they withdraw it, it's only a 30-day to resubmit once they know what the purchase option might look like?
Hi, can I step in?
Yes.
So the acquisition approval will cover, the office space application will cover the potential to acquire in fee the building, should that be able to happen.
Right, but I think the questions 3 weeks ago were about why we weren't purchasing it. And that part of the answer was that they hadn't considered it, they would look at it, and I think, certainly but I think there are other commissioners who were interested in having that conversation about the purchase. Since we have been leasing this for a long time, the proposal is for another long period of time. We occupy the whole building. We already pay the taxes, the electricity, the water, the sewer. So the question became, why aren't we
Correct. Understood. And I believe DCAS has reached out to the building owner to inquire whether they'd be willing to sell.
Right, and they said they would get back within 2 weeks. So my question was, why are we going to act on it before we have the answers to our questions?
Well, mainly because of the 30-day time frame, because we have to transmit this report to the council by Friday.
Right, but they could withdraw it and then resubmit it.
We'll reach out to DCAS and find out what they'd like to do.
That would be great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Cassandra.
No problem.
Lastly, for future votes, staff have prepared reports on the Long Island City Neighborhood Plan. There was a memo in your materials, and Hye-Kyung Yang is here to present.
Hello, Hye-Kyung.
Hello. All right, good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Happy September. Good afternoon again. Ahead of your vote tomorrow on the Long Island City Neighborhood Plan, we have some modifications to the plan we'd like to share with you. These modifications reflect cleanups to zoning texts that were discovered after certification and are proposed to be included with this application before moving to City Council. Next slide. On maintaining existing signage regulations, portions of the project area today are located in the Queens Plaza subdistrict of the Long Island City Special District. When these portions were moved over to the newly created Queens Plaza West subdistrict, regulations related to signage were inadvertently not carried over. This modification would carry over sign regulations from Queens Plaza to sites within Queens Plaza West that currently have access to them. On removing inapplicable certification, the proposed actions include a certification to modify the height restrictions within a flight obstruction area, an area defined in the zoning resolution by a map with a radius around LaGuardia Airport. Upon further analysis, we have determined that no portion of the project area is within the flight obstruction area. This modification would remove this certification as it is inapplicable to the special district. Separate verification letters from the FAA and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey would still be required, but would be outside the purview of the Commission. On extending WAP provisions, the Commission may remember an action within the neighborhood plan that includes acquisition of portions of the Con Ed Learning Training Center, sited along the East River to deliver a connected, publicly accessible waterfront. We included within our waterfront access plan a provision for this parcel, parcel 3, such that any development on the site that exclusively comprises of publicly accessible open space would not trigger all WAP requirements beyond the shore public walkway. Without this provision, the attempt to provide open space on this site could trigger additional WAP requirements such as supplemental public access area and uplink connections, which would impede upon Con Ed's operations. We propose extending this provision to parcel 2 of the WAP, which is currently occupied by the New York Power Authority. Acknowledging a similar condition of utility uses on this site and active conversations between City Hall, the council member, and NYPA to deliver open space here, we find this modification necessary to advance a major goal of this neighborhood plan to connect the Western Queens waterfront. And lastly, on designated wide streets in the waterfront subdistrict, continuing in the waterfront subdistrict, this modification would clarify the designation of where a street adjoins a public park. It can be considered a wide street. Similar to WAP features like visual corridors and uplink connections that are treated as wide streets because they abut larger open spaces, we believe that streets that abut a public park should have similar treatment. Next slide. Okay, and now to the recommendations. The actions the Commission is being asked to consider are the zoning map amendment that includes rezoning existing M1 districts into paired manufacturing and residential mixed-use districts, as well as including higher densities in existing industrial business zones. Alongside these new districts, the map changes, expands, and modifies the existing special Long Island City mixed-use district and modifies the outdated Northern Hunters Point waterfront access plan. The zoning text amendment maps MIH across the rezoning areas that have a residential component with all three options, including WAP bulk and urban design control, to better reflect the unique character of the waterfront sites at Animal Basin. UDAP site selection and acquisition and disposition actions that will facilitate the development of much-needed 100% affordable income-restricted housing and community facility uses, and make it easier to begin the connection of the waterfronts from north to south, and further prepare for future city-owned site actions that would allow the city to maintain control over what development rights are conveyed for the greater need of the city, and city map changes to facilitate the connection, public access, and circulations into the waterfront and open space. All these proposed actions aim to shaping a neighborhood centered in transit accessibility, access to essential services, and employment opportunities. Next slide. These changes were developed through extensive engagement over the past nearly 2 years with community stakeholders and elected officials, and in close coordination with city and other public agencies through this planning process. Together, these actions help advance the community created vision and goals for the One LIC neighborhood plan while addressing the city's broader needs and challenges, underscored by a citywide housing crisis. Time and again, the community of Long Island City has requested a comprehensive and holistic planning for their beloved, unique neighborhood that looks to both zoning and investments in infrastructure, public realm, and open spaces. And we believe this neighborhood plan does exactly that and allows for the continued coordination with partner agencies to identify and plan strategic investments for our neighborhood. Next slide. LIC has been one of the fastest growing neighborhoods in New York City, and over 21,000 homes have been constructed in the past 2 decades. While some income-restricted affordable housing has been created, current zoning does not mandate the creation of affordable housing in new buildings. We are excited to have the opportunity to map for the first time in Long Island City's Special District, MIH, that would mandate affordable housing as part of any new residential development. The rezoning changes in the neighborhood plan replaces decades-old, outdated manufacturing districts that shut off housing in one of the most centrally located destinations in Queens, proposing a nearly 15,000 new homes, of which 4,300 are designated as permanently income-restricted homes. Next slide. Long Island City is Western Queens' key industrial and commercial hub. It is centrally located and has excellent vehicular and transit infrastructure, making it an ideal location for businesses. The plan is designed to bolster critical economic activity, giving LIC the ability to grow in some of its existing uses, as well as expand in new ones. The new zoning will continue to permit the widest possible array of non-residential uses, with districts designed to foster industrial and commercial growth in mixed-use in sectors such as office, film, and food production, and other industries that have been emerging in the area. By using the newly created M1 districts from the City of Yas Economic Opportunity Text, LIC's industrial business area could develop with more flexible development at a range of industrial intensities and varied building typologies, such as multi-story loft-style buildings that could adapt to the changing needs of the growing residential population. Next slide. As Long Island City grows, new open space is needed to increase resiliency and support community well-being. With this neighborhood plan, we have the opportunity to create a resilient and continuous public waterfront from Gantry Plaza State Park to Queensbridge Park. The plan's innovative revisions to the existing Northern Hunters Point WAP helps to realize this important open space resource. The WAP sets forth the waterfront access framework, including locations of uplink connections, visual corridors, shore public walkways, and supplemental public access areas set at elevations that will provide protection from tidal flooding driven by sea level rise through the 2100s and flooding from low-level coastal storm events while balancing public access to recreational gathering space on the waterfront. Next slide. One LIC is an opportunity to re-envision the Long Island City neighborhood from a former industrial hub into a livable mixed-use and inclusive community, ensuring growth is met with smart planning for infrastructure, sustainability, and climate resiliency. This is the right time, an exciting time, where the asks from the community and the needs of the city are meeting through this neighborhood plan. The city planning staff celebrates and strongly supports this plan and believe it will create more equitable, resilient, and a vibrant neighborhood. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Hye-Kyung. And huge thanks to everybody who was involved in bringing us to this moment, particularly you and all of the team. I'm going to recognize them more properly at the vote, but I just did want to take a moment to recognize all the efforts that went into bringing a very complicated and significant project forward here. So thank you. Let me see if there are any questions for you, Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation. It's very clear and very useful as we come through the reports, basically. I have a question. So in reading the FEIS, I still see that there's a significant list of adverse impacts that are going to be unavoidable, including, open space, including air quality, including schools and libraries. And so I read through the rationale and the decision, but I'm wondering if there's anything that you can add as we prepare for the vote in terms of, how can we, as the commission, be assured that a rezoning of this scale will have the infrastructure improvements required to accommodate this amount of growth, as opposed to moving forward and then figuring this out later?
Thank you for the question. And it's a valid question. There are unmitigated adverse impacts that's stated in the FEIS. Through our rezoning, we have been, in the example of open space, we've been using our zoning tools to try to create more open space. So as I've explained, the waterfront, revising the WAP so there's more open space, elevating it, working actually with our agencies, including SCA, to really look at their programming, such as the playgrounds to parks. Yes, thank you. Space where, when school closes, can they make the playground an open space accessibility for the community? So we are continuing to engage with our public partners, our agencies, to address some of these needs. I think the Commission understands that these are mitigations that are not met. However, knowing that there is proactive, active conversations happening between City Hall, the council member who is an advocate of needing to address the need for the schools, open space is happening currently. It's very live conversations, and that we're in full discussion with agencies and council members, continuing the ULURP process.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, great. Thanks again, Hye-Kyung. Okay, Madam Secretary.
Next on the agenda is post-hearing follow-ups. We have the projects which had public hearings at the August 13th public meeting. First, we have BWJ PD Relocation and Plaza Project. There was a memo in your materials, and Juki Sai is here to present.
Hello, Juki.
Hi, good afternoon. Flipping forward a little bit in this. Good afternoon. This is a post-hearing follow-up and a staff recommendation for a city application from EDC, DCAS, NYPD, and Parks for a combination site selection acquisition, disposition of city-owned property, and 2 site selection actions to facilitate the relocation of NYPD Transit Bureau's 33rd District to a new facility nearby and the creation of 2 new public open spaces near the Broadway Junction subway station in East New York, Community District 16 and Community District 5, Brooklyn. This project certified April 21st, 2025. The public hearing was August 13th, and the CPC vote is September 17th, not tomorrow. EDC provided follow-up information about the Green Economy Action Plan requested by the Commission. It is in your briefing packages. The department supports this application. The proposed uses are permitted as of right in the existing zoning districts and are compatible with uses that exist in the immediate vicinity. The projects facilitated by the proposed land use actions are consistent with the goals of city-led planning studies and initiatives dating back over a decade. This includes the department's 2014 Sustainable Communities East New York study and 2016 East New York Community Plan, the latter of which committed roughly $22 million for the reconstruction of Callahan-Kelly Playground. More recently, EDC's 2019 study of Broadway Junction laid out a blueprint for the future of the area. Among the core goals it identified were making all lines at Broadway Junction Station fully accessible, activating the nearby streets and open spaces, and growing the area into a mixed-use district that is a major job center accessible to local residents. In 2023, the city and MTA announced over $540 million of major capital investments in and around Broadway Junction Station. This included $400 million for accessibility upgrades to the Broadway Junction Station complex, including a renovated station, 7 new elevators, and escalator improvements to finally bring full ADA access to the station. It also included over $140 million in capital funding for public realm improvements in the area, including Callahan-Kelly Playground Extension and Van Sinderen Plaza. The Callahan-Kelly Playground Extension will activate open space around the Broadway Junction Station House and build on the already completed renovations of the parkland. It will anchor the new public realm improvements in the area. Van Sinderen Plaza will create more open space and support the city's goals of activating Van Sinderen Avenue. The new NYPD Transit Bureau 33rd District building will replace the currently outdated, dilapidated, and undersized facility with a new one that will allow NYPD to effectively carry out its operations. The relocation of the facility from its current location will allow for the construction of Callahan-Kelly Playground Extension. Finally, the disposition of city-owned property will facilitate the transfer of excess development rights to an adjacent development site. This action will allow for the zoning lot to be developed fully under the C45D zoning mapped as part of the East New York Neighborhood Plan and support the goal of growing the area into a mixed-use district that is a major center for jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Juki. Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Oh, wait, before you go, Commissioner Soria has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the materials. I received the memo, I read it, and it answered a lot of the questions. There's just one thing that is pending. So I appreciate all the efforts to advance through city investments, particularly EDC, its leadership in that. I thought that was useful in terms of advancing Local Law 97 for the decarbonization of the buildings and the electrification of the city investments. But I didn't see, and I'm still missing information on 92, Local Laws 92 and 94 regarding solar specifically, but also just in terms of how much renewables are we, creating with these city investments. And so I'm wondering if you can maybe follow up with them on this. Having said this, I think that this is a really important decision that reconnecting the open space here just makes total sense.
Absolutely, Commissioner. I can follow up with them on that. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
It was Local Law 92 and 94. Thank you.
Thank you, Juki.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have 5502 Flatlands Avenue rezoning. Kyra Cuevas is here to present.
Hello again.
Hello again.
Hello. The department supports this application for zoning map amendment from an R32 to an R6A and C24 zoning district, and a zoning text amendment to map MIH, which would facilitate the construction of a new 7-story mixed-use building in a neighborhood that features a mix of low to mid-density housing, local retail, community facilities, nearby open space, and several bus routes. While the surrounding area features a mix of building typologies ranging from 1-story commercial buildings, 2 to 3-story homes, 3-story mixed-use buildings, and 4 to 7-story apartment buildings, the existing R3-2 zoning district only allows for a low-density housing development. The department believes that the project area, which fronts on 2 wide streets, including the 100-foot wide Flatlands Avenue commercial corridor, is an appropriate location for mid-density mixed-use housing that would be facilitated by the proposed R6A and C24 commercial overlay. The C24 commercial overlay would better reflect the commercial character of Flatlands Avenue and help activate the block frontage with neighborhoods serving retail and services, while the R6A district would allow for housing growth in a neighborhood that has not produced substantial housing in the last decade by enabling an appropriate density and diversity of housing types, including 6 to 9-story buildings. Lastly, the zoning text amendment will ensure that future developments in the project area will provide permanently income-restricted housing, along with creating 11 MIH units within the proposed development site. It is important to note that this would be the first MIH area designated in the neighborhood of Flatlands and Community District 18 at large. Thank you, and happy to take questions.
Great, thank you. Excellent.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Kingsbridge Armory redevelopment. There was a memo in your materials, and Camila Thomas is on Zoom to present.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Give it a second for the screen to show for me. Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a post-hearing follow-up and staff recommendation for the Kingsbridge Armory redevelopment. The applicant requests several actions to facilitate the adaptive reuse of the Kingsbridge Armory, the construction of a new 16-story residential building with approximately 500 affordable dwelling units and approximately 64,000 square feet of new publicly accessible open space. Next slide. Following the public hearing on August 13th, the applicant team submitted a memo expanding on questions asked at the hearing related to sustainability, proposed light manufacturing spaces, and updated signage. The applicant also submitted diagrams that illustrate the new proposed signage for all facades. The applicant notes updates to the proposed signage after certification were made to reduce the size and scale of the signs at the request of Landmarks Preservation Commission to ensure historical preservation of the facades of the Armory. The slide on screen shows the southern facade elevation with the proposed signage types, including illuminated and non-illuminated signage, freestanding signage, metal dimensional lettering, and cloth banners. So here are all the signs and the types color-coded. Next slide. This is the elevation of the western facade, again with the color-coded signage types as proposed. Next. And this is the elevation of the eastern facade. In addition to this, the applicant has also submitted new application materials to reflect changes to the signage. Next. Lastly, the Department of City Planning recommends the approval of the requested actions. These actions would activate a significant and prominent Bronx landmark that has sat mostly vacant for decades. The Kingsbridge Armory redevelopment proposal would help meet the city's goals for creating housing by enabling nearly 500 new affordable housing units, creation of new public open space, and new community and commercial spaces. The project would also create significant economic development opportunities for the Kingsbridge Heights community and the Bronx in general. And for these reasons, the department recommends that the commission approve this application. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take your questions.
Great. Thanks, Camila. Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation and for the memo. I have two quick follow-up questions. The first question is, kind of like building on what we heard from the council member in terms of the significant adverse impacts from the draft environmental impact statement. And so, you know, in previous occasions, we've seen how there are significant adverse impacts identified, but they cannot be mitigated. And, you know, once the FEIS is out, there's no time to really build on that. And so I heard a really clear message from the council member in terms of making sure that, in this case, the applicant team, but also the city makes everything they can do to do that. And so given that the FEIS specifically identified impacts on air quality and there are disadvantaged communities, census tracts designated here, you know, I was wondering if you can share with us or we can get a little bit more information in terms of what are the strategies that are being explored, because the DEIS is a little fuzzy in that regard. For example, it's not even clear whether there's going to be a micro-scale analysis or whether there will be a grid analysis. And so that will be useful in terms of understanding how are we thinking about it, making the clarification that these are not static sources but mobile sources. But still, given the context, that will be really important before it's too late. And then the second question is, thanks so much for the information in terms of the sustainability measures that we received in the memo. What I didn't see is how much renewable energy will be created here, and how does that relate to the needs of the venue and the needs of the housing buildings. If you can provide anything, or if you can ask for follow-up with the applicant in that regard, I really would appreciate it, given the opportunities at hand.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, those are great questions. I think the knowledge that we have as a department is a little limited because we are not, again, the lead agency for environmental review for this one, but we can follow up with the applicant to provide more feedback on both mitigation strategies and then also the energy question that you have on the venue.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thank you, Camila.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have 58 Nixon Court Rezoning 2. Hanif Yassi is on Zoom to present.
Good afternoon again.
Hello.
This is an application that was certified on April 21st. The public hearing was on August 13th, and the CPC vote is scheduled for September 17th. The department supports this application, which would facilitate the development of a new 8-story mixed-use building with 19 dwelling units, 6 of which would be permanently income restricted at 58 Nixon Court. The change in zoning district from R5 to R7A and R7A C24 aims to address the development potential of the area in line with its current needs. The zoning text amendment to Appendix F to map MIH ensures that future developments in the project area will include the necessary provision for income restricted housing. The proposed development plans to utilize the 4.78 FAR along with commercial spaces amounting to 808 square feet ground floor. The department believes that the inclusion of a commercial presence on the ground floor will serve the needs of the nearby hospital and residences without detracting from the spirit and vision of the Special Ocean Parkway District. The inclusion of 7 off-street parking spaces is a voluntary decision in line with the project's vision. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Hanif.
Thank you. Okay. Lastly, for post-hearing follow-ups, we have 464 Ovington Avenue rezoning. Katie Martin is on Zoom to present.
Hello.
Hi, Katie.
Hi.
We can.
Perfect. Thank you. So good afternoon, Chair Grodnick and Commissioners. I'm here to provide the staff recommendation for the 464 Ovington Avenue rezoning project. Slide. Okay, perfect. The department believes that the zoning map amendment to change an R3X to an R6A district within the Special Bay Ridge District and the zoning text amendment to create an MIH area are appropriate. The department recommends approval of the application, which would facilitate a new 8-story, 36,000 square foot residential building containing 40 dwelling units, approximately 10 of which would be permanently income restricted pursuant to MIH. The department believes that the project area can support further residential growth since it is located in an amenity and transit-rich area. The R subway line runs along 4th Avenue, and several bus lines run along 4th Avenue, 5th Avenue, and Bay Ridge Parkway, providing access to central business districts in downtown Brooklyn and Manhattan. The project area also has close access to important commercial corridors along 3rd Avenue, 4th Avenue, and 5th Avenue. Furthermore, nearby residential developments have similar FARs to the proposed maximum residential FAR of 3.9. Between 2010 and 2020, Community District 10 has experienced population growth by 9.3%, a net growth of approximately 11,000 new residents. However, in the same timeframe, there was a net loss of over 1,900 housing units, accounting for a decrease of 3.4% of housing units in CD10. Of new housing units added in the last decade, less than 10 were income restricted affordable units. The inclusion of MIH in this application will ensure that there will be more permanently affordable units available in the neighborhood. Furthermore, 2 lots within the project area, one to the east and one to the west of the proposed development site, would be brought into compliance under the proposed rezoning, as they both have higher built FARs than allowed by the underlying R3X zoning district, indicating that the area zoning is incompatible with the existing built environment. The department recognizes the opposition heard from members of the public who spoke and submitted their comments virtually at the public hearing regarding the proposed density and potential impacts to traffic, especially with the prominence of community facilities along the block. To the west of the project area, there are several medium density residential buildings directly across from community facilities, including a school and a church, showing that the type of development proposed is consistent with the existing built context. The proposal would allow the project site to provide incremental residential growth and new permanently income restricted units in the neighborhood. As such, the department recommends approval. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Okay, let's see what else we have today.
There are no other items on the agenda, Chair.
Okay, Madam Secretary, before we close, I just wanted to thank commissioners for being here. My commissioner for today, Reagan Joshi, I'm going to ask you to come over here for a moment and help me close out the meeting. This is for you. In a moment, but not quite yet, I just want to say thank you, commissioners. We will be back here for public hearings at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. With that, whenever you're ready, you can just bang the gavel and say we are adjourned.
We are adjourned.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Go tomorrow.
The time is 2:55 p.m.